Okay, still working on Sandy's on University Avenue, kind of like a Denny's restaurant. It was an older place. I like to tell some of these stories. It was an much older place, and so they had built the kitchen kind of a huge deal, like a queen size bed could sit in there. It was just a huge corridor there. I don't think they do it that way anymore because it could probably hold six cooks, but the restaurant didn't have that much business. So most of the time it was one cook, sometimes two, and so you had a lot of running to do back and forth in that restaurant. It makes a difference. If you've worked it, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm going to tell you about Kevin now, and I think he did a little bit better than most. And I'll tell you the story. He came from across the street over at Bob's Big Boy. I think they were right across, maybe cat-a-cornered from us, and they had an opening for a swing cook from 3 to 11, and I had been hoping to get that position. I was working on it, and but he came over and applied, and he had experience. They had a much smaller menu at Bob's, and kind of a fast food, more of a, but still more experience than I had. Anyway, and they were paying I think $3 an hour, and we paid $3.90 an hour. So yeah, that's a 25% or so increase. So it makes a difference when you're broke. And I couldn't really complain because he had much more experience than I had, and he was able to step in as a cook immediately. They didn't have to wait. And I tried to keep a positive atmosphere, thinking, well, next shot will be mine, that kind of thing. So he was different than the guys I mentioned to you, the thin people I told you about. He was kind of thick, real broad across the shoulders. Okay, well, not really fat, but like I said, thick. He just he took up more space, and he had sandy brown hair, kind of long. He'd have to pull it back, and he had one of those huge kind of fashionable mustaches at the time in the '70s, kind of looped over, kind of like handlebars. Okay. And he liked to talk. He he'd keep up a constant batter back and forth. So the window where they would place the checks and the food would go, it faced out on a few tables and also the counters. And he would just keep up a constant banter, almost like entertaining the customers the whole time. So lonely truck drivers, salesmen, and even some homeless, because of the area we lived in, they come in, they sit by themselves at the front counter, and they watch the wait staff and listen to the cook. Chat with him, you could talk back and forth right there. And Kevin, he always had something to say. The only time he really got quiet was when we got bombed, when the checks would circle the wheel and also stretch out across the item there. Sometimes you could pack them up and make a book out of them. I don't know where all these guys were. You did more checks than there are people. So, it was just amazing how it gets. And he'd get real quiet and kind of intense, okay? Years later, I don't think I do anymore, but years later, I would, even after I had left the restaurant, I'd have nightmares about that that wheel being full of checks and spreading out, and there's no end to it. You can't get rid of them, no matter how hard you work. It's my own little version of cook's hell there, yeah. Anyway, so when he would get bombed, I would go in and help out because I wanted to be a cook anyway. So I thought, well, I'll go in and help him out and do what I can. The manager will see it, and maybe I'll get a chance to get into there. I didn't get paid for it, no extra money at all. I'd have to go catch up my dishes at the end, washing the dishes at the end of it. But it was a job I wanted, another $1.40 an hour or something like that. And besides that, Kevin needed help. He was panicked out. He'd call out what to do, and I'd try to do. He said, drop me a basket of fries, and I'd drop the basket. Put down a steak, 2 steaks, okay? And can you make a chef salad? And I'd look at him with a blank stare. He'd say, okay, I'll make the salad. Run to the back, get me a head of lettuce. And an hour would pass, because that's kind of a long, if you get like that, it's an hour. You go, where's my food? Well, this might be at the end of that line or something. Anyway, so when it finally ended and you're getting rid of the last couple checks, now I guess you still have one or two going because, you never get completely done. It ended in laughter and relief, just kind of a, like, wow, because for a minute there you're thinking, we're scared. We're in over our heads. We think we'll never get rid of these. What are they going to do? Send these people home? I don't think I ever did. Every once in a while, somebody would walk out, but not too often. And often I think it was more them than us. So, yeah, anyway, eventually the food would all be prepared, it'd be served, they'd be eaten. The customer would be gone by the time we got finished. The tables would be, it looked like, a little disaster, a little apocalypse in the kitchen, in the restaurant, in the cafe. And then things would turn to this normal, steady grind, okay? And then Kevin would start talking again. And he'd say stuff like this. He'd say, man, don't these guys ever go to McDonald's? Come on, Bob's across the street. Go eat there sometimes. And he'd say that right there in front of the customers. They'd laugh. Ah. But it was in those busy times that the waitresses made their money. So they didn't want, that was what they had to make. They had to make their money there. They didn't want them to go away. Anyway, so he talked to the waitresses as well, and flirt with them and talk to them and stuff like that. He was young, he was single, good looking, at least I thought he was, and he was funny. I think of all the cooks we had, he was probably the funniest. He could make me laugh. But he had very, very little success with the ladies. Whatever they were looking for, Kevin didn't have it. And so it wasn't humor apparently. So, or they didn't think he was funny. I have no idea. Anyway, as far as I know, he didn't date a single waitress there. He was there a couple of years, and then he moved on. Anyway, so he didn't really like cooking. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but he didn't want. He'd show up a few minutes late, leave a few minutes early. He didn't like cooking. He was fairly good at it, and the food looked good. It went out pretty fast. But his heart just wasn't in it. He just wanted to make money, more than $4 an hour, And finally, he took a job in construction, left and went to construction. He was already a big, hefty guy, and he was going to be hanging rebar, he said. And so I ran into him again years later, maybe must have been 10 years later or something like that. And he was still hanging rebar. Okay, I ran into him at Denny's but a different one, Sunny Meat Boulevard, and so he was just there to have something to eat. And now he had a beautiful golden tan, like guys that work outside in the sun. So he had a beautiful golden tan. He had, he's always kind of big, but now he had these really thick forearms. Just you could tell he could lift. And he had these, not just a mustache, but he had these fuzzy country mutton chops, really, really big, and they would have never let him grow those in the kitchen. But they look kind of. I liked that. I thought it was kind of cool. Anyway, he was still single, still not married. And anyway, he was sitting at the front counter with truck drivers and salesmen, and he was sitting right there at the counter and just talking as he's like when he used to be in the kitchen. He'd be talking. Now he's at the counter and he's talking there. Okay, and he's talking to the servers. He's chatting with the homeless. He's entertaining everybody in the restaurant. And now he's entertaining the cooks, the troops, the cooks in the kitchen. So yeah, that was Kevin. That was the last time I saw him. I have no idea how he's doing now.